Welcome. I'm Chris McKean.
And I'm Andy Kyner.
We're all about cross-country racing, and typically it starts with 10 seconds.
But not in Iowa. In Iowa, when scoring is ready, it starts on hands-on helmets.
Scoring's always ready.
I couldn't let you get me first.
Yeah, I got that. Got to give it to you. Yeah, short week. Man.
It was a short one. It seemed like just yesterday we did another one.
Yeah. We keep busy in between the podcasts, so it goes quick.
Yes, it does.
Especially.
Tell you what. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, you go ahead.
I was just saying, I have ever since that last one, when we decided to kick this off this week, I have been like pretty stoked for tonight to get this going.
Yeah, it's kind of been some excitement and some work for us to do behind the scenes, get ready for the next one, especially with committing to 8. I know commitment's hard for you.
We'll be there.
So yeah, good series. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you've had some wrestling going on, and
some ups and downs, victories and defeats this week. It was a tough weekend for us, so we'll hopefully get to rebound. Where are we at tomorrow at Fort Dodge, and then we're also this weekend in South Tama. So,
well, you're probably sick of me saying this about racing and wrestling. That's the main 2 seasons of the year.
Yep.
And with those, they're so much alike. And the next one to happen, the losses is what makes you better.
Yep.
So that's the ones you want to remember early in the year. Hey, just all part of it, man.
Yep.
Gotta keep that up. Just like getting off the machine, having an issue or something, so all good. He'll do good.
Yeah. So kind of a big podcast, especially tonight. We've got 5 guests going to join us tonight. Kind of a big one again. Going to open it up with Matt joining us. And then we have Brady, Kyner, Travis Brandt, Brad Mathis, Jarrod Sheets joining us a little later. So quite the podcast. It's going to be probably a longer one. Now we try to commit to an hour, but we know how Andy likes to talk. So I'm going to guess it's going to be probably a 90-minute one.
I'm going to commit to an hour and a half tonight. Try to get shut down by an hour and a half. But you know what? I don't have a problem with that, because our next 8-ish episodes, I think we could go 3 hours and still keep talking. I mean, there's just that much stuff. And the thing is, it's like a genie in a bottle, we're rubbing the bottle, and all of a sudden these tricks and trades and thoughts and, and stuff to take. I don't want to call it a shortcut, because I don't believe in shortcuts, but it's just, man, that information, there's nowhere in our sport you can just go to the, the dictionary and look up what you're supposed to do. It's learning by, trials and mistakes and, and stuff. And man, to have somebody like Matt and our other 4 guests on here, I'm excited. You know what we should do? We should just get started.
We should get started. But before that, I got some breaking news I want to kind of share with everybody. It's kind of a hot off the PowerPoint, because that's where I just created it from earlier tonight. So Tylube has gotten some information to us. Tylube's stepping up again this year, which we'll talk about in the future. They already do a lot for the crew. They're going to step up and do some more for the crew, which we'll feature on a future podcast. But we kind of want to get the 2025 sponsorship out there as well. So for 2025, Tylube's going to sponsor 10 racers out of the series and 1 team of at least 5 racers on that team. It was kind of shared with me. In order to qualify, you have to use 2 of the products. So it's any type of aerosol product, chain lube. If I can think of any of the other products. Also, any type of oil that got to run at least 2 products. You need to run the Tylube or Ty Fuel logo on the machine in 4 spots and 1 on the helmet, preferably not where your barcode goes. And if you're chosen, you'll get special sponsored rider price throughout the 2025 season. Chad's asking that resumes be sent to him by January 10th. And if you're doing a team, he'd like to have a team resume. So if you're not doing anything else and you have some free time, Chad would love if you overwhelmed his email at chadtylube@yahoo.com. So
That's cool.
Grant,
I know I'm hearing a lot of stuff throughout the year. It takes a little while, to get people. We had a different fuel the year before, so it takes a little while for people to take notice. But man, with Chad being there every race, setting a booth up and knowing it's going to be there for you is huge. And I know towards the end of the year, I kept hearing a lot about, I told him I wanted some the last race and I wasn't able to get with him before he got out of there, but I'm hearing a lot of good things about that filter cleaner. And that sounds, a lot of people are starting to switch over to it. So yeah, pretty cool thing there. Glad to have them guys on board and have him there at every race. That's huge.
Yeah. And another thing that he was done last year is that he did the Tylube award, which was a class. What was it? One class every race, one class got recognized every race. So if I'm saying that right, it sounds like backwards. Every race, 3 to 4 different classes, but at least one class was recognized as the award, and the winner got $10. I think it was $10 certificate towards Tylube products there at one of the races. And you also qualified if you turned in your slip from the awards, qualified for the Top Gun award at the end of the year banquet. So from what I have gathered, only 19 people have sent in or qualified for that Top Gun award at the banquet.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's one thing that we see with, situations like this where people, and I'm not saying they're lazy by no means, but life's so busy, when you got to do this and send it in. Sometimes it just gets forgotten or put on the back burner. You just assume you got another day for it, but it's coming down to the end here where they need to get it in.
Yeah, so 19 people qualified, and we'll hear more towards the banquet, but I think they're getting a check of some sort, some sponsor money, and we'll get more details once that's shared with us to let everybody know.
Very cool.
So yeah, first sponsorship for this year. So as soon as we get information, we'll pass it along to everybody else.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Chad's corrected me. It was $20 worth of product at each race. Thanks, Chad.
But see, that's the silly thing right there. Is I'm not sure how much that filter cleaner is that everybody's raving about, but the spray, that's basically getting an opportunity to go up and get a can for free, or it might be 2 cans. I don't know, but it just seems like everybody I talk to that, everybody kind of over the years, they get their own kind of, whether it be oil, chain lube, or, what I mean, or filter cleaner or filter spray. But we get in the mode of just going back to that same one. But again, when he's there all the time, take that little step and just turn it in, man, it might be the best thing you've ever had, so I think it's a great idea. I just hope everybody hurry up and gets them turned in.
Yeah. So thanks, Tylube and Chad, for sponsoring and offering a sponsorship for the series.
Absolutely.
All right. So without further ado, let's bring on our first guest. I heard earlier he's 3-time series champion, won the AA class in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Also multi-champion elsewhere, which we'll bring him on and let him, another 3-time champion outside of the series. So we'll bring him on and kind of let him go through his accolades.
So you're forgetting one of his biggest ones. Is 3-time back to back, the toughest race in America. I truly believe it. For ATVs, 3-time Heartland Ironman champion. That is amazing.
Yes.
That is amazing.
All right. So further ado, welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Look at this. What's today's date? I can't remember. 12/11 of 24, and Matt Lindle makes a return. Write this down.
A few years later.
Yeah.
I think I can race the vet class now.
What? Oh, the vet? Yeah. I don't know. There might be a vote at the banquet to keep you out of that. Well, man, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. You've, conversations that we've had with you have really kind of lit the fire for this, mini series that we're doing. And you've been gracious enough to spend a lot of time on the phone with us, for talking about all different, or up to 8 now, and that's pretty cool. I mean, I've told a lot of people, Matt, that you and I talked the other night, but if you listen to this tonight, starting tonight, and all 8 episodes, I think every night they're going to learn something. But whether you're just starting out, on that little limited 50, we got some stuff down you and I've talked about on that, and all the way up to, the AA class. I don't think there's one person in our series that can't learn a couple things from this that might just have overlooked something, and this is, I've never personally, you and I talked about the writing schools, and you don't have time at writing schools to talk about a lot of stuff that we're talking about. And I'm very grateful to have you come on and do something that, again, I think is unprecedented in our sport, so definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I've got a few years removed from the sport, but I think that's actually a plus for something like this. I feel like it gives me a lot of perspective that I maybe didn't have when I was immersed in the racing and trying to win championships and everything. Plus, with it's 6 years or so removed, I've matured a little bit too, so that might help too.
Yeah, but I gotta give you credit, and I think Chris will definitely agree with me on this. And I'm not knocking anybody else, but and I know I've told you or said this in front of you at the banquet, when you were a champ, 3 times in a row there, you have always been one of the absolute most professional athletes that we've had in our series. The way that you handle yourself race day, the night before, throughout the day. We've seen you spend a lot of time with the youth and other riders and stuff. And I can tell you this, I've never once heard one bad thing about somebody racing with you, like the bumping, or whatever it is. And as many years as you race with us, that's crazy, so that's, I don't ever remember even having you, which I always gonna make me into a liar here, because I always say if you race long enough, you're going to get off track. I mean, it's just part of our sport. But I can't even remember anybody ever, saying, "Hey, he got off track." I think a lot of them always questioned if you got off track because you were just so far ahead. but no, nobody ever had that thought. I think ever came through, and that's something to really be proud of. Is you definitely set the standard, I think, in our series and for many others. That the way you carry yourself and the way you prepare and race and then whether it's a win or a loss afterwards, so I give you hats off there.
I appreciate that. I really got to thank my parents for that. I mean, that's just how I was raised, and I believe that through and through. It's just my personality, and I believe that was instilled in me from a young age. Just give back, be nice, be fair. I mean, I didn't want to win any races by doing anything illegal or cutting or just not who I am. I don't remember ever getting off track at one of your events. I do remember once at a GNCC, and they knew it. A couple of us admitted to it. We knew we took a wrong turn and we got docked a bunch for it. But in my career, that's the only one that stands out to me. There might have been another one that I'm not thinking of, but that's the only one that stands out. It was a pretty big one too. We got docked quite a bit, which was justifiably so. We knew we didn't know it immediately, but we figured it out pretty quick that we were no longer on the correct track.
And, we're going to talk about some of this stuff in further episodes down, but just why you highlighted, or I guess why we're talking about getting off track and you not having a history of that, is I want your thoughts on this. But I tell everybody, sometimes when I go up to somebody after the race, it's like, oh crap, here he comes, and there's a problem, or whatever. And, and we'll go up and someone's gotten off course, and right away, I don't mean to be mean, but right away, it might be a parent, it might be a brother, it might be a girlfriend, it might be a wife, immediately jump to, you think he cheated, or, you think that person cheated. No, I'm not saying he cheated. I'm saying he got off course. There's people we've definitely caught that actually tried to, don't get me wrong. But in our sport, it's not like we're fenced in, around an 8th mile little track. In our sport, if you race it long enough, with the dust, with the mud, arrows, anything. There's so many split decisions you make. To miss an arrow, to get off the course. That's just part of it. But the other part is, like you said, admitting it afterwards and just taking the penalty and say, hey, I learned from it, But it's not, it's just, to me, it's always kind of taken in a negative. And 99% of the time, I think it's truly an accident, So, but now when the same person has that same accident, 7 races in a year, that's when Chris starts getting involved. So, but no, what's your thoughts on that? I mean,
I'd have to agree with you pretty much 100%. I think 99% of the time it's an honest mistake, and it's quite easy to do in our sport. Like you said, I really believe it is. The instance in my case, the one I can speak for personally, it was at a GNCC, and there was where we in the afternoon went on the new part of the track that the morning class doesn't run. The banner either didn't get put up or had already been, I guess, half down, whatever it may have been. We just ended up on the morning track, which cut off about 1.5 miles of the afternoon track. Well, when we met back up with them, we were quite literally with the top 3 in XC1. And it was like, oh crap, this is not, we knew we weren't supposed to be there. And I think it was 3 of us, if I remember right, 3 or 4 XC2 riders. We immediately pulled over, let those guys by that were running up front, and then just kept racing, of course. But at the end, they came and talked to us and everything. And can't speak for everybody else, but I admitted it immediately. I was like, yes, I cut that off. I don't remember seeing the ribbon. It was an honest mistake, and whatever happens, happens. Like I said, I think I got docked 3 positions, if I remember correctly, at that race.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Like I said, it's part of the sport. So, but Chris, what's tonight's episode about?
Tonight's episode is all about the machine. So like, what kind?
Like farming machine? I know a lot about those now.
It's red, isn't it? So, Matt, what kind of, before you retired, or maybe we actually should just back up. Like, what type of machines have you raced on?
So personally, for me, I've only ever competed on a Honda, and a Honda 450 is the only thing I've ever competed on. I have rode quite a few different machines. I've rode the Suzukis and Yamahas, but the only thing that I've personally competed on is the Hondas. Worked really well for me. It was a comfort thing, as far as not just feel comfort, but also just maintenance comfort for me. I did like other machines that I was on, but I had to kind of weigh my options as to, is it worth the switch over at that point in my career or not? If I was still currently racing, it might be a different answer, but at that time it was sticking with what I knew was the answer for me.
Gotcha. So you're kind of leading right into what we were going to talk about tonight, obviously, was you started on that and you just kind of stayed on it then. You built your parts up, you built everything, we talked about there and stuff. And so you felt kind of almost not obligated, but, it's like almost
comfortable is what I would say.
Yeah. Comfortable. Yep.
Yep.
So I want to back this up and start where, like, let's even say a 50 limited, a 4-year-old getting into the sport. Okay. The same question goes for that junior racer that's 13 years old and just getting into the sport. The same thing goes for that B rider that's just getting into the sport. Even the AA rider, that changes a little bit by then. But so I have a 300 EX. I'm 150 pounds. I wish, but
and you're 6'3".
I just want to go get a machine, or like I said, I have a 300 EX right now. I want to try XC racing. I'm hearing this and I'm seeing Matt Lindle always on a Honda. Should I go buy a Honda 450?
So it's a good question. And to me, it's a loaded question, because there's really no perfect answer for it. I think if you have something currently and if you have that 300 EX, I would recommend start out on that. Start out, see if you enjoy the racing, get used to the environment and the racing itself before you really make any rash decisions on machine or even parts for the machine necessarily. Kind of dip your toes in and get a feel for it first before you make any big decisions, because picking a machine is a big decision unless you have very, very deep pockets and you can just switch back and forth all the time and see what you're comfortable with. And if you don't have access to be able to go ride all the different brands, it makes it even tougher because you're just kind of taking a guess at it, or you're jumping on whatever your favorite rider may be on, whether that's Walker Fowler or Adam McGill or whoever it is. And so for me, there's a lot of options, but at a younger age, especially, and a new person that has no experience, if you have something, it's good enough for racing. That's my personal opinion on it.
So I'm gonna put you in a tight spot here. We see this all the time. We get kids wanting to come start racing. I'm talking about our youth riders now. Okay. I get this. It's always about 7 years old. I'm on a 90, I don't really want to go backwards. I don't want to, but I really want to race, like say a 90, but he's never raced before. And some of them I've had say, well, what's the fastest ones? I keep trying to tell people it's not about the fastest one. It's about you getting out there and learning, and I think that goes with the adults too, doesn't it?
100% agree with that. At the beginning of your career, this is just my personal opinion, the fastest machine should be the least of your concerns. That might be controversial, but that's my opinion on it. And I have my own proof to back up why I have that opinion. When I raced my first few local they were hour to hour and a half races with at the time, I think it was the MXC series. It was pretty close and local to me here. My very first races, I won my first 2 races in C class and B class on a completely stock TRX 450R. I didn't even have tires on it. Actually, I think I had rear tires, but I had stock front tires, stock handlebars, stock steering stem, stock shocks, stock seat. Everything was stock. And I of course don't contribute a lot of that to the machine. It was myself, because I had a lot of years of just backyard play riding with me and my buddies growing up. Specifically, one friend that I had that lived close, we rode all the time as kids. So I was very comfortable on it, and I was a decent rider at the time. And so it worked. So to me, at the beginning of your career, until you're competing for a AA win, the fastest machine should be the least of your concerns. That's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, I always tell people, I know we're getting more into suspension when I say this, but I bet I said 1,000 times in the 21 years where people have to either make their machine faster, or they go, like you said, get the absolute fastest machine, though. Maybe go buy a Walker Fowler machine, and come back and, man, this is going to be the end all be all, and you get out there, and 90% of the time when that happens, I truly believe they go backwards. They go backwards. And I always tell everybody, we've never given a trophy, not one time, for the most wheel spin. It's just getting on there, like you said. And I always use the word, I don't know if you agree with me, but I always use the word overdriving the machine. And once you can, like say, well, I'm on that 300, I tell people all the time, don't be afraid to go out and race, in the adult classes, on a 300. That's fine. I've seen, gentlemen race a 250 EX before and do really well in the classes, because they just can maintain that speed, but it's all from experience. It's not because of the machine,
I couldn't agree with that more. Another example, just personal example, I believe people could go back and look at pictures. Let me see if I can get the year right. I think it was 2016. The Ironman class at the Heartland Challenge that you were speaking of, I won that by a very considerable amount. And I believe for a little while I was in the top 10 overall in the whole race. And if people don't believe me, they can go back and look. That was an almost completely stock TRX 450R. It had wheels, beadlock wheels, tires, one of the cheaper, almost shock absorber looking steering stabilizers, not the fancy precision. There were stock shocks, revalved by Bart Thomas at Shockworks at the time. I didn't even have an oversized tank on it, I don't believe. It was very simple. The motor was a factory 2007. I know people never believe me. No head, no cam, nothing. Bolted on an HMF exhaust. So a very, very stock machine. I think it had aftermarket clutch in it to survive for the full 10 hours, but very basic machine. And for a long time throughout that race, I was running lap times within the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's cool. And that's, I think I'm just going to guess here, but the reason you did that for that race was probably for reliability, correct?
Partially reliability, partially I was a little thin in the quad department at the time and trying to race GNCC, Iowa series, and OMA series. I didn't want to tear up my nicer race bikes, and I knew that out of every race, that race especially is all about attrition. It's survival. Don't override the machine. Don't override your body, because you have to survive. So I knew it was even less important for that particular race, and that to have the suspension would have been nice, don't get me wrong, but the motor is an absolute non-factor. I know people probably also don't believe, but most of that race, unless it was on a straightaway, I did never go over half throttle, because the main reason was not I'm worried about the quad, it's I'm worried about my hands. I learned the hard way the first year, my hands and the insides of my legs from rubbing on the machine are going to be the weak points. And so I didn't want to override the machine and cause myself physical pain and too early in the race. Like I said, I learned the hard way the first year, but so to me, like to your point of the 300EX or the 250EX or a stock 400 or whatever it may be, a stock 90, it doesn't matter what it is, what class you're in or age. If you can ride a lesser machine and even just keep pace for a lap or two with guys, to me, I agree with you. It's a huge benefit, to be able to do that. I look back on racing my stock machine for my whole first season of racing and I actually think that did me a lot of good, because if you can hang on to a stock suspension, stock motor machine for an hour, 2 hours, whatever the race may be, you're doing something right physically, because that's not an easy feat. And our sport, the cross country racing, is, in my opinion, 50% or more physical than it is anything else. It's a very, very, anybody that hasn't done it, and anybody that hasn't done it understands, or doesn't understand how physical it is. And anybody that has done it understands just how physical it is. You get to that 1 hour mark and you're like, holy crap, you mean to tell me I'm only halfway? I mean, I used to do that in AA class still sometimes.
I think Chris hears that quite a bit, don't you?
I do. That's why I like to throw up the one more laps, give the one finger one more lap just to get some.
I might or might not have cussed you in my helmet a couple of times.
Oh, we know it. It's encouragement when we put up the one more.
Sometimes I was happy. Sometimes I was like, how about 2? Because I was feeling real good. But there were some times where I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So we've talked about like different machines. What if you had to go through and look at that? I always say like the stock 50 is probably my favorite class, because those kids are just all fresh. And you don't know this, but we had some situations this year where we had to put some rules in on the limiteds to make sure that the one class that there's nothing going on is that one, like a stock. What am I trying to say? The stock,
true stock
PDI
machine
box, and stuff like that. And that makes a huge difference on those. You gain 2 mile an hour on a little Yamaha 50. That's huge, but that's the one class to me that it's like, it's an opportunity for the kids to be kids, to have fun, see if you like it without, I may be wrong, but without worrying about the wins,
It's very pure. It's a pure class.
Yep. Have fun racing with the kids and spend that first 2 years or something. Not everybody's going to win a championship. I know everybody would like to win a championship, but typically if you have some struggles, to me, you're going to do better, a couple years down the road when you've made those mistakes and you start learning from them, And so like the 50 stock is where I'm getting at, the 90 stock. Those are classes that you go buy a machine and you come out and race, and you look at them and you can throw a blanket over the top 4 or 5 coming right together. It's almost like a parade, and those are some of the classes that I think tells like the real story, And then you get into some of the other classes where they can start working with the machines and stuff. And I know that makes you faster, but it's like all of a sudden, even for a parent, that makes it hard, because there's 10 times more service on when you get those faster, like the DRRs, Apexes, when you get to your 450s and stuff like that, But what is your take on just coming in, no matter what age I am, what class I am? What's the single advice that you would give, number one, to whether it be an adult looking to come in at a C class or a youth coming in and you're talking to their parent when it comes to deciding the right machine? And let's get past I think we agree that if you have one, race that starting out, just race it, go try it, go have fun. But once you actually get to that, maybe that into that first year, the second year, and you feel like I would really like to maybe do a little bit more or something, and they start trying to choose a machine, what is your advice on trying to pick that machine?
So for younger, a little bit newer, like you're saying, say they've been in it a year or so, I still at that point, I'm in the camp of don't overcomplicate it. Just pick whatever. If there's something, if you have the ability to ride, like say a friends or something, to try things, and if the kid is more comfortable on them on a certain one, of course that would be, it's hard to argue with that. But to me, I would look at it, you're going to keep leveling up if you plan on doing it long term. So if you and your child, I'm talking about pretty young kids here specifically, if you and your child agree and there's hopefully going to be a future more than just a year or two, they're going to be leveling up to different machines as they progress. So I would, as a parent, I would look at quite a few different things more than just purely how fast it is and everything. Look at maybe some aftermarkets if they are going to move up to a class where there is there availability for certain things, or even as far as getting rid of it, is there a good resale or anything? Because to me at that age, I think a lot of people overcomplicate it. It's all about the fun to me. I mean, you got to have fun and learn things. You don't necessarily have to have the best of the best machines sitting under you. So think of some other things down the road, because it's just like when you have a kid in sports, they're going to outgrow those shoes that they have in football this year and going to have to get new ones next year or whatever. That's going to happen in racing as you move up into the bigger classes. You can't race a 90 if you're going to go be in B or A class in 4 or 5 years. So you got to think of some of those other things too. And that's my personal opinion on it. I think some people just overcomplicate it at that age. I really think that's a little bit of a maybe underpowered, under suspension machine can do a kid a lot of good, because they do a lot more learning. And I have experience I can speak from experience on that. Like I said, with my stock 450, I mean, nobody's out there winning AA on a stock 450, but I raced one for a lot of years and learned a lot of things before I got to winning AA races.
And I think that also goes back to what you're saying on that is when you get in, the old saying, and I don't care what sport it is, I think if you go I've never been involved in this, but if you go take dance classes, I think Chris would understand from your daughter, taking dance classes now, isn't she?
She's gymnastics. We're past
gymnastics. Dance. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, whether it be, a traveling baseball, or whether you're racing, it all seems expensive when you get into it. But a lot of it is so self-imposed. If you just focus on learning, and I'm going to use an example here. I don't like throwing a lot of names out, but Chris, I think you've seen this too, but Mimi and Hoyt Faulkner, we've seen the videos of them. They've got a circle track at home, and we're watching them go out there and just ride and put the time in on the machine, and we've seen a huge advancement. And, Hoyt and Mimi, from 1 year to the next. And a lot of that to me is people come, and I know I may be getting a little off subject here, but on the machine, it's not about going and buying that, that golden ticket that's hanging on the wall to put on this machine and have good. And it's about what you do in between the races, preparing yourself and the time. It's invaluable. The time that you put in riding, nothing else, just riding is second to none, I think.
I 100% agree with that. prime example of, once again, speaking from my own experience, because it's the only thing that I have to go off of that I can truly talk about with 100% confidence. As a kid, with my buddies, we didn't set up tracks and race for speed necessarily. So when I went to my first race ever, that was my first experience truly riding for any length of time for speed. So like you were saying with that little oval track, my buddies just riding wheelies in the field after harvest, and there's a bare field there, just little stuff like that, jumping the ditch out front of the house, whatever it may be, got me so comfortable on the machine and understanding how to manipulate it and just know where all 4 tires are at all times so I don't hit a tree, or what's going to happen when I hit this certain rut and all that stuff. That, to me, until you get to the highest level of the series that you're racing in, that should be all that matters. And I know back when I was racing, my sponsors probably would have hated me for saying that, but I truly believe that. There are some things that are definitely not bad buys, like tires that maybe don't puncture as easy as some stock tires and stuff like that. There's a few things, but you don't need to overcomplicate it. I 100% agree with that. I think it's all about learning, and the little bit of struggle at that time, I think can make a better racer than a worse racer. That's my opinion on it.
So are we safe to say that starting out, use the machine that you have or have available to you?
Or is the most reasonable to purchase maybe in your situation? I mean, if you're into spending a whole bunch of money, more power to you. That's great. It feeds the sport. No argument there. But if you don't, just don't overcomplicate it. Just use what you got and enjoy the struggle a little bit. Just have fun with it and learn. And I pretty much promise you're going to learn a heck of a lot more on a machine that's maybe underpowered and under suspension than you are on that perfect built machine.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, again, I haven't done anything that you've done, but just sitting there watching you guys do this, it appears to me like the guys that take the baby steps, run a stock machine and then put, like we're talking, next week about tires, and then about suspension, taking that one step at a time. But I mean, I ain't kidding you. I know guys that's went out and dumped $4,000 in after their first race. And then it's like, to me, what I always see about this, and Chris and I have talked about this, I know several times, that's the longevity of you in the sport. If you jump in and you spend a ton of money and you're doing nothing but working on that bike, you're going to be in the sport for, I'm going to say, 3 to 4 years. If you take that time and you learn and you start feeling, because you can feel a lot faster on a 400EX than some guys will jumping on a 450, and that's where I'm going to get to here in a second, is learning to overdrive almost, get every single thing you can out of that machine before you look to a different one. But once you start going to a different one, you and I are prime example. I'll use you and Brady because I've never raced like you guys have. So, and we'll get with this with Brady in a second too, but you're how tall?
I'm 6'1", just over 6'1".
So you seem 7 foot when you're standing beside me, but anyway, but like Brady is 5'4". So some of that, I was talking with Weston Rainwater at DRW earlier tonight, and he was talking about ergonomics, and so is it just a personal thing on setting on one as far as being able to understand like the body language, or is it some bikes, for a short guy having to overcompensate because you're short, you know what I mean? Or, you just hear this all the time. It's like, oh, you're 5 foot, well, you got to be on a 400, you know what I mean? Or you're 6'8", then you got to be on a Yamaha, you know what I mean? It's just, there's that stuff goes on out there, you know what I mean? Those little beliefs. And how do you see, or how important is the ergonomics?
I think at a very high level, it's important, but at a class or below level, I think it's negligible in the machine itself. I will say, like I said, I've rode Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha when I was racing. And they were not all set up identical, so it wasn't true apples to apples comparison. But I personally was still the most comfortable on the Honda probably, but the Yamaha was a close second. It felt a little narrow for me, but I'm sure I would have got used to that. I believe that the height differences and weight differences are a lot more come into a lot more play as far as the track than the machine, my personal opinion, because you set in the long run, if you're tweaking on it long enough, you set your machine up for you, no matter what your height or weight is, and can make it pretty good. I believe that there was sections I know there were sections that Brady was definitely at an advantage with being a little shorter and lighter than me. But I know for a fact there was certain sections and maybe even races, like in particular mud races, that I was at an advantage. And it kind of shows. You can even see it sometimes in GNCC if you watch those. And I just know from personal experience that I do pretty good in mud races. I kind of liked them. I wouldn't say I loved them, but I liked them a lot of times. But my height and weight, I can really manipulate that machine, and it comes in handy on mud races. But faster, more open tracks, my weight, my height isn't doing me much good because it's just making my center of gravity higher. So there's definitely pros and cons, but I think everybody can see you can work with whatever you got. I mean, Tucker went back when I was racing, him and I were both tall guys, and we were always battling a lot. And I feel like we had very different riding styles, even though we were both tall. And then we go to GNCC and race with shorter guys. And I mean, it was all shapes and sizes. You can make it work. But I do think there's advantages and disadvantages, points on the track more than the machine personally.
So really that kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to see that word, Chris. What word am I looking for? It's like a stigma or something out there, that it kind of leads you to what machine, it's just kind of people talking. But what you're saying,
I don't personally believe that. No, I mean, I think everybody just has their preference. I think if you have the ability to try out the machines, I would definitely utilize that. If you don't, that's a tough one. I mean, go to a dealership and sit on a new Yamaha. Other than that, you're going to have to buy a used Honda if you want to stick on one, because they haven't made them since 2014. And right. I definitely wouldn't buy a Suzuki at this point, because it sounds like they're getting hard to even find parts for now, because they haven't made those since 2009. So
what about a KTM?
No, they haven't made those forever either. So I don't know the availability on parts on those. And now it doesn't sound like it might not be great for the dirt bikes either.
Oh,
I did hear something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, a little financial trouble from what I read.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people
they pull through.
Right. For our sport, we need every manufacturer we can,
I agree. I've never been a big KTM fan, but I was definitely not happy to hear the news, because it's not good for the sport.
Yeah. Especially XC, when you stop and think about that. KTM more the dirt bikes than anything, but yep. I can't think of another company. I mean, when I think XC racing, when it comes to two wheels, the first thing that pops in my mind is KTM.
They have dominated the cross country, if you consider as a globe. I mean, especially over in like Europe. I mean, those guys, they're just so dominant over there.
Yeah. Hopefully that can be saved.
Yeah.
So I got another question. And when I say what we did, or my boys did, by no means I want anybody to think that I'm trying to say I did it right or we did it right. It's just experiences that we went through, and some of it I know I was holding my kids back, but I thought it was a way for them to learn a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, like, we started out on a Polaris 50 Outlaw. Okay. We bought it on the Thursday before the very first race, so there's not much on them. You're just going to kind of go around anyway. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when we went to a DRR, I remember we were the first ones to bring a DRR back. We bought it at the Power Sports Show, and back when they had that big one in Indy. Yeah. And we brought that back. And I remember the DRR, the manufacturer we were kind of building a relationship with, and he goes, "Let me get you a kit to widen it out." And I was like, "No, I do not want it widened out." And it wasn't because I didn't want it too wide, because we know on even the kids' courses, adult quad can usually go through there. You know what I mean? But my whole thoughts was, and I know my kids, I don't think they really ever complained about it, but I would say that we are almost all the time on the narrowest machine. And what I mean is that's saving money, number one, but I always took it. We tried to focus on corners, not straightaways, and I always took it that the narrower machine, when they were little, they learned that body English, not from someone telling them how to do it. but going around there and making circles, and if it meant they rolled it a couple times because then they learned where the stopping point was, but on those machines, what's your take on that as far as how do you learn from minor stuff versus jumping in head over heels and spending that $6 or $7 grand on I guarantee you, I mean, not just us, there's everywhere. There's people spending $6, $7, $8 grand on a little 50 DRR, What's your take on that? If you're going to choose like a machine that's a high maintenance machine, it's fast. What's your take on something like that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you were saying there. Definitely don't. I like what you said earlier about the longevity in it, and I think that spending that $7, $8 grand when they're that little on that machine, I think that does hurt it a lot. I think it especially from a parent standpoint, because that is a lot of money, especially for a youth quad and stuff like that. So I don't personally agree with it. These are, like I said, these are just my opinions, and like you said, everything I'm talking about, I just talk from personal experience because it's what I have the experience of and I can speak solidly on, but I'm not saying that it's anything more than my opinion. It's not. I mean, I guess I was fast in my day, but I still don't think that my way was the right way either. I think there's many right ways, just depending on the person. So, but I don't personally agree with spending a lot of money on the youth. I know I've said it a few times, but I think you learn better on a lesser machine. I really, truly do. And especially if that kid's riding that narrow machine, if he's out in the yard trying to take a corner fast and gets it up on 2 wheels, he learns, okay, that's the limit right there. And even if he rolls it and he's hopefully learns that's the limit, I can't push it past that. But to me, that's good. I mean, hope they don't get hurt. Hopefully they're wearing all their protective gear and everything, but you've got to push those limits no matter what age to really, truly know what is this machine capable of. How far can I push it? I've always said if you don't have at least one little crash, and I say crash lightly, it doesn't mean that I'm going tumbling or I tagged a tree and bent a frame. But if you don't have one little crash where you rubbed a tree hard or you got really out of whack and had to rein it back in or whatever it may be, tipped it up on 2 wheels in a race, you're not quite pushing hard enough. I don't want to go over the edge. I didn't want to go over the edge and not finish the race because I crashed, but I want to have those little moments where I got up on 2 wheels because I pushed it too hard in that corner. Well, that's the limit. I know I can't go that fast. I have to back it down just that 1% and keep it a little closer to on all 4 wheels at least. But yep. I think you learn all of that so much more on a lesser machine than a good machine. If you go giving that kid that perfect machine, it might get a little bit almost too much confidence with it. I think at least from my experience, I learned better with that. I always practice on a lesser machine. I never had, all through my entire career, start to finish, I never had a practice 4-wheeler that had anything but a stock motor and stock revalve suspension. It had tires on it, and it might have had a muffler on it and handlebars to match my race quad, so I had the same handlebar feel, but it never had any motor work whatsoever. I wanted reliability, and I wanted it to be slower. I wanted to see how fast I could get that stock machine to go, and I wanted the stock suspension because I wanted it to beat me up a little more and know that if I can take this corner that fast on a stock machine, when I get to my full race build, it should handle that no problem. That was always my mindset on it, and I believe at youth, I think that's even more prevalent because I think that's when kids are learning the most. So they need to have that almost lesser of a machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know, real quick one here. I know I won't mention names, but one of my boys was on a machine when we were young and they were getting smoked on the start. Okay. And then he came in, he's like, Dad, he's flying past me on the start. Well, common sense, and I'm not accusing anybody, but yeah, I am. But if you have that much power on the bottom end and you have that much power on the top end, it's probably not a stock machine, And so he's like, Dad, what can we do? I'm like, we can go home. You and I talked about this the other day. We can go home. We can build a little track, and you can attack every single corner. And both the boys started going out there. And if you've seen this little track that my boys grew up practice on, you people would laugh because it looks like a little 50 MX track, but it was to keep your wheels on the ground. It was to attack the corners. We have like maybe one straightaway in the whole thing. And our thoughts was always, I may not have the fastest machine, but if I can win, there's 1,000 corners in our sport. If the track is good, in my opinion, and I'm knocking us or anybody else on this, you got one or two straightaways, a true straightaway. I mean, you got one or two straightaways to 1,000 corners. It's not one on horsepower. It's one on by doing that. And my boys going out with stopwatch and just attacking every corner and see how fast we could get. And they do that for hours, But that's a difference in throwing that money at the machine and looking for a quick answer at the next race a month later, or putting 30 days in of work and making that machine that you've got work, is the way I seen it. But
yeah, I agree with that completely. I was notoriously a bad starter for almost my entire career until the end. So I got pretty good at making passes, I feel like, towards the end. It took me a lot of years to get good at it, but I think part of it was what you were just saying. I never had the motor. Until I started racing GNCC, I never even ran high compression pistons in my quad. They were still stock pistons. I just had head and a cam, and that was it until I did GNCC. And even in GNCC, I never did the biggest piston that you could do that all the XC1 guys are running and stuff. I never did that because for me, I wasn't worth the trade-off. I wanted the reliability over that little bit of power. I figured I can compensate that until I get to XC1. And once I get there, then maybe I'll treat myself and have that match power. But until I get there, I don't need it. That was just my mindset. And so, like I said, take it back even further. All three of my championships with your series was on a stock piston. I had head and cam and exhaust on it. So I'm not saying it wasn't nothing, but it was probably less than some other people on the line, which definitely not saying that's why I got bad starts. I got bad starts because I suck at starts. But I eventually started practicing more and more and more. And I got to where I practiced starts constantly because I was so bad at them. And I got to where towards the end, I was getting GNCC whole shots, getting whole shots at your series. I was doing a lot better at them because I practiced a lot and just got more comfortable on the starting line. My problem was I wasn't comfortable on the starting line. So it was a lot to do with myself and a little underpowered on the quad, but it made me a much better passer, I believe, because there's a lot of wins in a lot of the series I raced. I came from last place because I just was a terrible starter. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't have the years of being able to practice passing people. And you see it a lot in XC1. You see Walker or Bryson or somebody come from a dead last start and pass. Well, they didn't get to that point accidentally. They made a lot of passes prior to that, probably on lesser machines at some point. And I mean, I think it's important. I completely agree with how your family did it. It's similar to how I did it, I believe.
So if I'm hearing right, and I don't want to first of all, I want to ask you mentioned GNCC and your starts here. Did you ever once line up at GNCC and put your hands on your helmets?
No, but I thought about it a lot. I thought about a lot if man, if we had put our hands on our helmet, I bet I could smoke everybody here. Nobody else has ever probably done it.
Yeah. So what kind of summing up what we've been talking about here? And I want you to answer in your mind, but what I'm kind of hearing from you, and I want you to answer this, but there's no right or wrong answer on a machine, no matter what age you are, no matter what level it is. It's a machine that you feel comfortable on. Doesn't make any difference who's winning on what machine or what your neighbor has or, anything like that. It's just, I think what I'm kind of getting out of this whole story is just put your time in on the machine that you have. And then once you get comfortable to where you can almost override it and want to move up, then get it. But to me, it's almost sounded like it's almost a bad thing to jump in head over heels and put everything on it and say this machine's better because it's faster. The rider has to be just as fast as the machine. Yeah,
that's my opinion on it 100%. I mean, it's like I said, it is just my opinion, so take it for what it is. But I believe that if you do the work on a lesser machine, I think in the long run, it will make you a better rider. So the way I would look at it now with the perspective that I have, I would say a younger kid, say I was 16 years old, starting out in C class, I would look at it as my goal is A class, double A, whatever my end goal is, where I want to race and start winning races, I would look at the C class and the B class and whatever other class that are as stepping stones. I'm not looking to go out there and win every single one of those classes and races on the way up. I'm going out to maximize my learning potential in that on the way up, and across the board, not just the physical learning, as in how to take corners properly, how to get across deep ruts better, stuff like that. It's also working on your machine. It's what things wear out, what are service intervals on certain things. You're learning all of that when you're starting out. So if you have an end goal and you want to take it, if you're just a weekend warrior and you want to race C class just for fun forever, more power to you. I'm not at all against that. But if you have an end goal of getting to the highest level in the series, I think you need to look at those lower classes as stepping stones. And I know that might sound a little bad, but that's how I looked at it when I started racing. I had a goal, and it was to be GNCC XC1. That was my end goal. And I didn't really, on my way through the C's and B's, it sounds bad, I didn't really care. To me, it was learning, and I had my eyes set way further down the track than just right there. So I didn't necessarily think at that time that I had to have the latest and greatest best parts. Once I got a little bit older and stuff, I got a little more that way, and I regret it to an extent. I think I should have stuck with the lesser machine probably an extra year before I went to full suspension. I got some sponsor help, so it did help me out financially, but it still cost some money and everything. And I really think looking back on it, if I would have stuck one more year on that mostly stock machine that I talked about, I think it would have been huge. And I also think there's a lot of learning that can be done in losing, and more than winning. If you're constantly on the best and winning, you almost can get a little false sense of confidence maybe. And there's always somebody out there better than you. That's my belief. You're never the best, even if somebody tells you are. I used to hear a lot of people tell me when I was champ that how good I was, and I'm like, nope, not even. You can't let those thoughts creep in. So to me, at a young age, I don't think it's necessarily the best move.
Gotcha. As you were talking there and explaining that, I just started making fun of myself, going over in my head how I think. I think this relates to other stuff too, other sports, not just ours, on like what you were just talking.
100%.
I feel like a fool here when I'm listening to you. It just hit me that I just got done with hunting season, right? The last 5 years, I've hunted with 4 different guns, thinking I'm going to a better gun. You know what? I've been doing worse each year because I'm not getting used to that gun. It just hit me when we're talking about it. It's like there ain't a bit of difference. If I would settle in on that one and put my time in on that one, I might actually be getting called a hunter again. Right now I'm a glasser because I don't get nothing.
I agree. It's what's gave me the perspective is my businesses that I have now, that I know you and I've had personal talks about it, things I'm doing. I've got a lot going on, and that's gave me the perspective that I have now. When I was racing, I didn't have the same perspective. I'll be completely honest. It wasn't quite the same. I had some of the same thoughts, but not quite this deep of the perspective. And now I see it more, like you just had the example of the guns. I just got a new gun last year for deer season 2, and same thing. I just wanted something better, and it's really probably was not necessary. I killed many a deer with the one I had previous, and I've only killed one with this gun in 2 years. I didn't end up killing one with it last year. So I completely agree, but I see it in my business. When in the businesses, I don't have to have the latest and greatest tractor or corn planter or combine to raise the best corn. You just don't have to. There's a lot of other things that go into it. And I think that's overlooked in racing. I think the machines are focused on a little too much, as far as I think people put a little too much weight on them. They're not the end all. I mean, like I said, I truly believe, and I always thought it'd be funny to do, if Tucker and I would have switched machines, I bet we still would have been right there racing with each other, even though we probably had different setup. I know we had different suspension and this and that. We were pretty close to the same skill level, and it didn't matter what you put us on. We were going to find a way to be battling with each other every time. I believe that.
I do too. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, you know what? We have some other people waiting to come on, and we want to ask them a few questions while you're here, and they might even have some questions for you. So let's transition over and get some of them guys on, and some of them, I think you know every one of them. Looks like Travis has his muted. There we go.
How we doing, guys?
Good. There, we got the whole gang on here now. Hey, and where's Chris?
Disappeared.
That's perfect. This works out really good. So we want to welcome Travis Brandt, Brad Mathis, Brady Kyner, and Jarrod Sheets. And we're going to kind of open this up. We're going to go like one at a time. I don't want to say real quick, but we're going to go to one at a time and kind of explain why you're on here, get you guys' thoughts. And then I just want to shut up. Nobody make fun of me when I say that, okay? But I just want to shut up and kind of let you guys have an open conversation, have a chance to ask Matt a question, bounce something off each other, you know, from your experiences, and let us learn that way, if that makes sense to you guys. So we spent this almost an hour. I think that's exactly what I said, was 7:45 to 8 o'clock. You guys coming on, and we picked Matt's brain this whole time and learned a lot. And you guys are the four people that we picked out to come on this based off of what we are talking with Matt about tonight on this series. So Travis Brandt, we're going to start with you, but you know, the main reason we called you, Travis, you've been around for a long time. Not calling you old, but you've been around this sport for a long time, but even more importantly, you gave back to this sport for a very long time with helping so many different riders. And I look at you over the years, and even the people that's kind of in that, what do you call your camp right now?
Bad Habit Racing.
Bad Habit Racing. You walk through there, you have several people there, not just racing, but support. And that's one thing that gets overlooked in our sport way too much, is the support in the pits for you guys, you know, whether it's cooking or doing pit stops or whatever. But you have worked and wrenched on so many different machines, Yamahas, Suzuki's, Hondas. Oh, shoot, he's back. Oh, there he's gone. But you and youth machines as well, you know. And so we would like to have your take right quick on, again, you've got kids that's short, you've got kids that's tall, you've got athletes, you know, the adults, you know, tall, short, you know, whatever it might be, different statures. What's your opinion on picking the right machine?
I think Matt nailed it with starting with the stock machine. Even when I started on a bone stock YFZ 450. Raced first year. Now, I did come from flat track and motocross a little bit, but when I started this XC racing, I made sure to run a full season on a stock machine and made sure I like it. And it kind of progressed from there. I tried a couple different machines to kind of fill out what I did like and what I didn't like. But I think you guys already kind of pinned it with starting out. I mean, make sure it's something you're going to commit to. It's been running for a little while now with me and the family and whatnot. So it's something that we kind of decided this is what we're going to do. And, you know, we went through the progressions of getting farther along in the sport, but you definitely don't need something crazy to come start off with to come compete. I made even my son, he started on a little KFX 50. Made him run first like year and a half, I think, something like that, on a bone stock KFX 50. And when my daughter decided to join, she rode Cole's old, completely beat up TRX 90 that he destroyed in the backyard for a long time. So picking the machine is definitely just make sure it's something that you're wanting to do before you go jumping in too deep.
Yeah. Huh. So with that being said, though, when you get to the adults then, and I mean, the different statures, do you believe that makes a difference on what machine? Like, there's one machine better than the other? Or is it back to, you kind of already mentioned, like, spending a lot of time in the backyard? wheeling around? Is it just about kind of committing to get better, to learning to ride that machine?
I think that's definitely a better approach, figuring out what you're comfortable on before you kind of pursue a certain machine. You guys kind of said making sure if you got a chance to ride multiple, I guess, to figure out which one you're comfortable on. I kind of went through a few of them before I settled on my Suzuki, and everyone knows I'm kind of partial to the Suzuki thing now. But it's just what felt good to me. I motocrossed on one. I didn't know how it was going to transfer over, but when I did, I just felt good, and that was my deciding factor.
And I think that's a big point you just mentioned. And I won't quote Mathis saying stay off a Suzuki, but it's the first one that we're talking to, we knew that you're on the Suzuki, but you don't see, like we mentioned, the KTMs, I can't think of one fast guy that we have in our series that's on a KTM. I mean, I just can't, but gotta hit Paul up a couple times. But
I only said that about the Suzuki because not everybody's as good a mechanic as Travis is. So they're a little hard to find some things for now. So somebody starting out, it might not be the best option.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I just give him a hard time. But so you found some, no matter if you might be only one of what, maybe 4, maybe 5 at the most in the series, Yep. So you found something. You're a perfect example here. You found something that you like, even though they're not built anymore. The parts are getting hard to find, but you just feel comfortable on that one.
That's what I felt comfortable on, and after making the adjustments more to suit me, I'm obviously a little bigger than most of the guys that were kind of lining up more towards the front. So I had to make some shock adjustments to suit my style, but it just felt comfortable. It felt at home, and I think that's a big part of if you want to go fast, you gotta feel good.
So last thing for you, you have Dylan in the AA. You still mess with AA. You've got your boy that just won the second time anybody in our series that ever won the overall of a GNCC for the youth. You guys are on 3 different machines, and I know I don't want to leave anybody out. You probably got 4 or 5 other riders in your group, and there's just several different machines. So to me, that almost proves a point that quit looking at what Matt's riding when he's winning, a race in XC2, or whatever. It's like whatever you feel comfortable with, run with it, make it the best. And it's like you mentioned, though, again, going out and riding around the yard. It's putting that time in between the races and getting more comfortable with the machine that you have.
Absolutely. Dylan, I took a long break. He didn't race since he was a kid. When he came back, I'm like, man, they don't make Honda no more. They don't make Suzuki. They don't make this or that. Let's maybe look at something we can get parts more readily for. Would be Yamaha. Have you tried? He hadn't really rode one. He has now, but he hadn't really rode one before. And he's just like, I feel comfortable, and that's just what I want to do. So we make it work.
Yep. Very cool. Cool. Let's go over to, thank you, Travis. We're going to open it up here at the end if I can get through it quick enough. But Brad Mathis, otherwise known as Bad Brad. So Chris asked me earlier, why do we call him Bad Brad? And I said, well, he used to race. Then he came to help us. But then he became Bad Brad when he went back to race instead of helping us. So, but you're back. So we've kind of lost the bad already. So, but so you're in here for a completely different view of what everybody else is. Brady's been there, I guess, and could probably talk about this as well. But you have 2, now you're almost on your 3rd one that's racing in the youth. Mm-hmm. You've raced in utility class, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And not only that, but you are seeing probably more than 99% of people at the races on failures, the riding styles and stuff from out there working the track and seeing people. I'm kind of overstepping what I want to ask you here, but we see people all the time that come back and said, I don't know how he's faster. You and I both know we see the guys go around the corners. And again, if we're talking about 1,000 corners out there, you can see that one's really fast in the straightaways, but then it comes to that corner and man, it's slamming on the brakes, trying to make the corner. And they're losing a couple seconds in every corner, and we're seeing that all the time. And it's not just the KTM riders, but with that being said, though, so give us your take. First, I want yours on the youth, because you're so involved in the youth right now. What you recommend people getting involved with? Maybe your class that you think is probably the most. Tell us like what you think you're going to learn the most in, maybe on a class, and then even just your take on. We got two guys here tonight with utilities, on the differences maybe you've seen on maybe people coming in and trying to race on a utility. And same question for you: do I race the machine I got? Do you have to have a Can-Am 1000? Do you have to have a 1000 Polaris? Talk to us a little bit about that.
First off, with the youth, yes, and new riders coming in, get yourself acclimated with the series and come and watch a few races. If you have a young rider, I know we've said this before, you've said it, Matt said it, just get familiar with your youth and what machine to run. You don't want to go throwing a new youth rider on like a DRR, because then there's going to be a lot of maintenance issues. There may be maintenance issues that come along with it. I mean,
you said maybe.
maybe.
You said maybe.
I know some that have really good luck with a stock setup and can run really good, but then they go tweaking them, and you put a pipe on it, then you gotta carburet. You got to work on the carburetor, and then you do that. Then you got to work on the clutching, and then the clutching's burning out every race if they hit a mud hole or something. So then it's more maintenance on the parents, and then that might drive some of the parents away because it's too much maintenance than what they can handle if they don't have a good mechanic or somebody to back them or help them. So, step into the right class, I would say. With what you feel comfortable with. That's what Travis was saying. Make sure you're comfortable on the machine. Young riders, I would say I always held my kids off until they were 5 years old, because all we had back then was a stock class. And when they were 4 years old, they couldn't reach the brakes. They couldn't reach the levers. And that's a big thing, because we do have hills and kids need to use their brakes, and some kids are a little small and can't reach the levers, and then we do have some issues. So I am 100% happy with the limited class. They're smaller machines. The younger kids, the 4 and 5 year olds or whatnot, can definitely start off on them a lot easier. So it's a good thing that we did start that limited class. Yeah, just the mechanics of all the different types of ATVs and the youth. I guess just what you feel comfortable with and what you can work on the best and keep good maintenance on it. As far as like somebody, I've never been on race quads very much. I used to race dirt bikes as a kid and took a few years off, quite a few years, and raced cars and stuff. And then I've had 3-wheelers and utilities on the farm growing up and riding all the time. So I just love to ride. That's why I joined the series, so I could actually just ride. So I started officialing back in 2011 and 2012. And I guess I've been there ever since, and I liked it so much. I'm like, well, maybe I could race one of these things. So then I tried racing utilities for quite a few years, and it's a different experience to jump right into the utility class, but you can jump right in and run what you have. The Can-Ams and the Polarises are probably going to prevail. If you ride anything else, maintenance issues, you really got to know your machine, your equipment, because they do tend to break down a little bit more, I would say. And they are slightly more costly through a certain aspect. I know you can stick a lot of money into race quads, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, you can actually race any utility. The last race at Murray, that one kid showed up on an old farm machine, and he did actually pretty good until it broke down on him. But
Was that a Wolverine?
it was something like that.
Yeah.
Big
Yep.
Bear or Wolverine or a Moto.
Yep.
Moto 4 or something, yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, come out and try it. You can, if you got something and you feel comfortable on it, just make sure it's mechanically sound as much as you can before you hit the track. Otherwise, it is more work on us officials.
Yep. Gotcha. Well, thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
So we went to Brady. So Brady's on here for a couple different reasons. Number one is when we started thinking about this podcast, Brady's been on a Honda outside of like DRRs when he was youth. Brady, you've been on Hondas pretty much your whole life. And then tell me where it went from there, because I have a perfect Honda sitting in the garage right now that's not getting anything done to. And tell us a little bit about what you decided to come back and race. And then I remember getting the phone call, Dad, I just bought such and such. And tell us what got you, number one, to come back. Number two is what prompted you to make a switch in machines.
Yeah, I think first off, coming back, I think I just missed adrenaline, and I missed the racing family, to be around, being able to battle bar to bar, and just see people mess up, and then you mess up right back in front of them, and then just kind of smile and wave at each other. But I mean, racing wise, machine wise, I love the Honda, and I don't even know what's done to it. I just kind of would get on and ride and hope it finished the race, and it did every time. And that's just kind of how I was raised, is race what you got. And kind of as I got quicker and raced guys like Lindle and Brandt and now Shorty and all these other guys, is I couldn't throw around the bike being my size on my setup of my Honda. Brandt could probably vouch for this. I bounce off every corner possible trying to stay on the machine on the Honda, and I just felt like when I was able to get an opportunity to race a Yamaha, I'd never rode it. I mean, I just kind of jumped on it at Stockton one time, and just the amount of feel I could have in between my legs, throwing it into corners, cornering, that aspect, I just felt like it fit my body a lot better, to be able to use more power, where I'd have to hit a corner and run on my right foot, trying to run it back down on four wheels, to get it back down, to run the next corner. The only difference between the Honda and the Yamaha, I guess too, the big things is the cornering. I would say Yamaha does not steer anywhere near what a Honda does. That was a hard part for me. And the two is, I feel like I could run my Honda a little harder, hotness wise. With my new bike, it got hot a couple of times this last race of the year, which was new for me, because I'm pretty much always on the rev limiter and like a low gear. So that was two big differences for me. But I'd say just feeling wise, and kind of like what Linda was saying about size, I felt like my Honda sat a little bit higher, and just would just catch corners, where I just wasn't able to set up the corner and be able to rail it out like some of these other guys I was racing against, and I had to make up time in other sections. And sometimes when you're racing a fast guy, you don't have those sections to kind of mess up, in order to be at where you need to be at the end.
So I've noticed one thing with you on the Yamaha. I think it was that Stockton race. And I've never asked you about this, but now that we're talking about it, is there a reason for this? And maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but it seemed to me like when you're on the Yamaha, you're leaning over a lot more. And I remember I thought it was maybe that race or the race that you did this year at Weldon, your back was bothering you afterwards. Now, is that just setting, and maybe you guys, anybody else can tell me on this too, but and Brady, I'll have your answer first, but is that something more of just like dialing that machine in for you, like the height of the bars? Or is there really that much difference between like where you set and where the bars is per machine?
I think it's probably both. My back always hurt when I was racing my Honda too. And honestly, I don't know how to set up a bike. I just kind of race what I have, and I was probably out of shape for both of them. So that probably didn't help after 2 hours. But I think it's kind of preference, and but also it's 2 hours of racing. Your back always kind of hurts.
You just remind me of a cold trickle. I don't know anything about the thing. I just drive.
I like that mindset.
So, Brady, I'm gonna throw it to you. You've been on the youth machines. A lot of people probably don't realize this because it's been 21 years ago, but we bought Brady a Polaris 50 on Thursday before the very first race ever. We went up to the top. It was at the farm. I don't know if you remember this. I'll bet you do. We took you for your first little drive on that. You went up the driveway, and coming down, I told you to stay behind me because there's a washout there where they made so the water would run. You came flying down, decided you want to pass me, and you hit that washout and flipped it. You bent the key all down, everything. It's an hour after getting the machine. And when you got back on that machine, I remember I was never worried whether you were hurt, whether that be right or wrong. It was, okay, is he going to get back on? We raced in 2 days, and you jumped right back on, and we all went down, and everything was fine. But you started out on that, and you won the very first race ever in the series. It was the 50 race. And but with that being said, you started at the very bottom, being the stock 50 class, and you've ended up in the AA class now. As far as advancement and stuff, what would you tell, whether it be a kid out there now, a parent out there now, or somebody wanting to come out and start racing as an adult? What's your single advice that you would give as far as picking a machine and getting started?
I mean, I'd find the most reliable slow machine out there, and maybe take the muffler off so it makes it sound good, just so it makes the kid feel better about it. But I mean, I started out slow, and honestly, that's where you push a machine slow, and like a slow machine, so fast that, I mean, you end up breaking out. I remember I PW50 just destroying the thing, and you'd have to make dad buy you a new bike. You know, you just destroy what you got. And just starting off slow, and making sure you get down what you have. And when you get to the next level, you're able to make the switch pretty easily, because you see a lot of kids in the series that are mid or even low in a class, and they just get old enough for the next jump. And whether it goes from a Honda 90 or a DRR to a Raptor 125, and you can tell they have no clue what they're doing, shifting or clutching wise. And I think the amount of time you spend on machine allows those transitions to be a lot smoother, and the power difference to be a lot easier to transition. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that helped me understand my limits was a dirt bike. Because I never had a spare foiler. I had a Honda or stock Honda 250X when I got to a 450 that I had. But other than that, it was just a old dirt bike that I could rip around as much as I could, and understand balance and using my knees. And obviously, when the dirt bikes, when you get up, they get clutches quicker. So having that transition when I got to the first Raptor 125 was definitely a big help in me understanding how to ride and handle, and be able to make that transition quicker.
Cool. Last question for you before we open this up and get to Jarrod right quick. Racing, wrestling, obviously that's kind of your life. Both of them, I think, transition over, and I think I could ask this question for both of those sports. Is it more the mind, or is it more the equipment?
It's 100% the mind. And it's controlling your thoughts. I mean, that's in both sports, is how you let your mind unravel. Because I mean, even my last race, like, I mean, I could tell you 15, 16 times where I could have been done so easily, because I was tired and let this new machine throw me around for 2 hours. But just being able to attack the next corner, attack the next lap, grab a water, whatever it may be, to trick your mind into doing a little bit more. And the longer you do that, the more resilient you are. And I think that's what kind of allows people to be successful in both sports and eventually life. I think that's one thing that's allowed me to do what I do, is just being able to control your thoughts and make everything hard.
So I got to ask this funny question really quick. I remember your first time, I believe it was, on a 450, or I'm sorry, going to AA, was at Carlisle, which you usually had pretty good race at Carlisle. I don't know if Matt's going to remember this, but I remember you guys were pretty close right up to the last lap, and I think Matt pulled like 30 seconds on you or something. But I remember being at the finish, and Matt was sitting there, and he came through, and he goes, "Where did you come from?" I still remember you saying that, Matt. So my question is, had you been on a Yamaha, you think you could have beat him?
I would have raced whatever I had. I don't know. He was pretty quick. I was just happy to beat Huffy at that point.
Yeah, I was just having fun with that one. So.
I do remember that one.
Do you? So, well, thanks, Brady. Jarrod Sheets. Jarrod, let's be quite frank. If I say something nice about Jarrod, I sure don't mean to, because Jarrod has caused me, he's been the biggest pain in my butt for many, many years. And everybody knows this. Jarrod is known for one thing. What is it, Jarrod?
I don't know if I could pinpoint it.
Come on, your rain dances.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't a pain for me.
Jarrod, you're really light talking. I don't know if you can get the mic a little closer or something, but
Is that better?
I think so. Is
Okay.
that same? Can you guys hear him better? Okay.
Yeah.
But so, Jarrod, you've always done well in mud races, it appears, but you're on here for a couple different reasons. You've had 2 kids now racing throughout the youth and getting into the bigger classes. I remember when you started out, you were on the Raptor, weren't you?
Well, I was on a buddy's Raptor because my other Yamaha was blown up at the time when we started right off the bat.
I just remember you being in the stock class and being my pain in the butt. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do, remember that? Came down to the shocks, and can you replace the factory ones with factory reservoirs, and all that stuff. So you were always looking, when I'm pinpointing this out, you were always looking at the details on, on what machine you had, on what you could do better type situation. You've been on several different machines, sport quads and utilities. And you've been at the top of the food chain, on both of those before, won many championships. So tell us a little bit, your experience with the youth, what you see in the youth as far as maybe picking the right machine, maybe what class you think is the best. I'm not saying anyone's necessarily the best, but maybe which one do you think they learn the most in, and then your experiences with your sport quads and utilities, and maybe why you chose those machines.
Yeah, well, with the kids, I mean, first you really have to look at your own kid. What's your kid's comfort level? That, my kids came in that they were different riders going through, and so you just had to kind of look at their comfort level, what they're comfortable with, what they want to do. If you have something for them, don't go out and buy something. Just bring them to a race, see where they can fit in, let them just kind of hang back and try the track, see if they're going to comfortable, where they're going to be comfortable being at. And I saw the one comment here, a guy was asking about recommendations, if they thought their kid should be on a shifter, but the kid's not comfortable on a shifter. Now there it is. I put both of my kids on the shifters, on the Honda 90s when they did the stock class, and neither one really knew how to shift. But with that machine, you could put them in second gear. It could climb any hill. It could take off from a stop. And, for probably that first year, you hardly heard him shift. You'd hear me screaming at him, yelling at him to shift down the straightaway. but they wouldn't shift, and it just came natural. They finally started learning how to shift because they wanted to keep up with other kids. As they progressed on to, a modified class or go to junior, then when they had to learn the clutch was nothing for them to learn after that because they knew how to shift. And so it takes time, more riding, more practice. They work with it and get fluid with it. Like with they didn't have this cool tool with my first kid, but with the second one, now we've got these Bluetooth helmet comms that we can run. And that was just so awesome because I can put the comm on my boy, we can ride together, and I can talk him through this without having to, pull over and say, no, we need to do it like this or this. We can be riding live. Hey, this is coming up, downshift, and you'll see how this works so much better. And, little teaching tools is, as the kids grow, that, that's one thing that's worked well for me with the kids there. Adults picking a machine, again, if you've got a machine, just come to the track. It doesn't matter if it is a sport quad or a utility. Come to the registration trailer. There's a class for you, and just come try it out. My first race I ever did, I showed up to the race, and I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. We're going to go ride through the woods, and man, I was riding way over my head. I mean, I didn't make it a mile. Flipped it, broke my throttle off, had to bust open my throttle housing and ride it back by pulling on the cable. And I come back home, my parents says, there, you got that out of your system, you're done? I said, no, that was the funnest mile I'd done in my life. And, I was hooked. That was it right there. So the big thing is come, try it, and instantly you're going to meet people. I haven't met a single person you couldn't just walk up to, let alone our race. You go to a GNCC, any of the quad cross country racers, everyone's so friendly. They'll tell you their whole life story, what they've learned. Any question you have, people will help you out, and you're going to pick your own path. You may see people doing some things. You're like, why are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. You'll see other guys doing things like, that's a really good idea. I'm going to try that next time. And you pick your own path when you're racing on some of that stuff.
Yep. Very true. So yeah, so I guess since you've raced both of those, which one did you have? Did one of them create more fun for you, or was it different challenges?
Little different challenges. I mean, the first one, he was a little hungrier, more competitive. The next one, I feel like he's really getting there. He's doing really, really good. But, in the end, I'm not going to be the dad that screams and hollers and pushes. And, it's not about the wind. We did that new track at Weldon this year, and Kip come in, and he'd had a bad race. He bumped a kill switch or something. It died. He couldn't figure out how to get it going. He's like, he come in, and I've never seen such a big smile on his face. He had the biggest smile, finished 12th place. And he's like, that track was so much fun. And I said, I don't care how you finish. If you come in from every race like that, man, I go, this is why we do it. If you come in here, you want to spike your helmet and throw your goggles, we're done. We're going home. But I don't care how you place. If you come in with that attitude, you had that much fun, we're coming right back. This is why we do it.
That's cool to hear, because Matt and I had an hour conversation about this the other night, and we have one of our topics coming up that will be a lot about that, what you just talked about. So that's really refreshing to hear that. So I want to open it up. I'd say probably at the most, probably 10 more minutes. But I just want to open it up, I'll shut my mouth here, let you guys have any questions for each other on maybe something to point out for people to learn from when it's on the topic of machines, basically. Matt's been here forever. It doesn't get much higher in our sports than what he's been. So I'm just going to open up and let you guys, if you have any questions or have thought about something while someone else is talking, you want to make another suggestion out there, this is the time. So you guys go ahead. Or Matt, even if you have questions for them, either way.
Well, I like that it seems like we're all kind of on the same page. So I think that's hopefully good for the viewers. I mean, we've got somebody from Brady that's raced every class, but somebody from pretty much every class or aspect of the sport. And we all kind of have the same mindset on it. It's not necessarily about having the latest and greatest and best machine, or at least what somebody tries to tell you is the greatest. Just enjoy it, especially if you're starting out. Just go enjoy it, whatever it may be on. It doesn't matter if it's on a Honda 4x4. Just go enjoy it.
I agree. Exactly what Jarrod said about his son came in with a big smile on his face. I have to say, what me and Brady were battling, we were always neck and neck, and man, that was just always whether he beat me or I beat him, it didn't matter. We just always had a great time. We raced clean. I don't remember any one time we ever got into each other during all of that, and it was just you came back and you were wore out, but man, it was fun.
Matt,
Can attest to
I
that too,
missed this.
Brady.
I missed the first few minutes of the podcast here, but if some other listeners missed it also at the introduction, when did you get into ATV racing? Like, how old were you, and what did you first start riding on?
So I had so I was a little unique, and I never did have a youth quad growing up. So I guess to answer the first question, when I first got into racing, I believe I was 16 years old when I did my very first race ever. So I was kind of late to the game, but I was riding a Warrior 350 before, which was my dad's, bent frame and all, before I could actually even touch my feet to the pegs. Don't tell my mom that because she might murder my dad. But I was riding that before I could even touch the pegs, and then so I beat the heck out of that thing for years. And then I worked. We used to have livestock back then, and my parents made me a deal if I took care of the calves all winter, fed them, water, everything for the whole winter, that they would get me a newer quad. And so it was a new to me 300EX is what I got, and I ran that thing into the dirt. And then I saved up enough money to buy a Honda 450 in 2005. So the second year that they were made. And that was what I started racing on a few years later. But I had a ton of riding experience. So I didn't race growing up, but that was my life. I mean, I didn't even really know that much about racing when I first got into it, but it was, I mean, riding after school and on weekends, that was my life. It 100% revolved around it. I was in the woods. I was in the fields after they were picked. I was jumping the ditch. I was fortunate to live out in the country, so I had room to ride some. We had a few acres, and I just rode the wheels off stuff. So when I got to racing, I didn't necessarily have race experience, but I was very comfortable on a quad. And I raced for, don't quote me, but from 2006 to 2009, maybe 10, somewhere in there. Full seasons, but not all of them are full seasons. And then I kind of took a long break there and only raced a few times in between 2010 till 2013 or 2014, I believe. And then that's when I got back in it and really started taking it serious, was around that time frame.
Yep. Nice.
Cool. Anybody else have anything? No? Everybody wants to go to bed, don't they? Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I know some of you are going to be back on. Matt's going to be back on several times throughout this podcast. I'm going to release some of you guys. Matt, thank you so much. You've been on here the longest, and I know you spent twice this amount of time just talking about these subjects. And we're going to get deeper and deeper in thoughts and everything else moving forward. And again, I know we're going to bring some of you guys back on again and some other people. So thank you guys for giving us some time. We're going to keep Travis on here, though, because Travis is helping us with a new project for this year. And everybody's willing to stay on if you want. But I know some of you has probably got little ones to get to bed and everything else. So, but we have some exciting news about our schoolboy class. And Travis has been kind of spearing it up for us, and like to give him a few minutes to kind of tell everybody what that's going to be, and kind of the basic rules of it, and how we're going to manage that.
Yeah. So the AMA announced, I believe it was week and a half ago. I think I called you that start talking about it. That the schoolboy class, the 250 hybrids are a lot of work to make happen. There's just no way around it. They were a lot of work, a lot of money. You could run a 400 EX, but just like everything else are kind of getting outdated, and it's been a tough task to do. They have allowed that you take a 450 and you put a 400 cylinder and piston in it. They also changed the rule, I believe, from 15 to 14 that you can start doing this.
Correct.
That's right. Right. You used to not be able to ride a 400 cc quad until you were 15. They've lowered that, and instead of making a bike, cutting up the chassis, doing this and that you need to do to put a 250 dirt bike motor in it, you can now take like a YFZ 450, for example, put a 400 cylinder on it, and everything else stay the same. So the motor mounts are the same. The whole bike is the same. And when you go to advanced, all you have to do is put your 450 piston and cylinder back on and tune your ECU, and then you're off. Makes it a much more economical way to run this class, which I think is fantastic for a sport. I think it's pretty exciting that, so if someone's coming from junior class or even younger or just getting into it, if that's all they can do, it's an easy way to join the series, if you're not old enough to get on a 450 yet, and a lot more economical. Just a couple parts change, and you can stay on that bike for forever. You change out the cylinder and piston, and you're back on your full bike for the rest of your career. And I think it's really cool. I think it's really smart decision, and I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, Travis, when you reached out to me about this, I had talking with AMA about the commission and stuff. I knew they were getting ready to vote on some stuff, but we didn't know exactly what they're voting on, and when you told me that, my first example or my first thought to you was what? Nope.
Yeah, he said no. Yeah,
no. But that's why we got to. I'm trying to get better with, I don't want to say age, but experience, and listening, and stuff like that, and people like yourself that's willing to help with this kind of stuff. And the more I thought about it, I think the first night that you and I talked, I went to bed that night, and I remember laying there for probably at least an hour thinking nothing about anything except for this class. And what you just summed it up was perfect, because I'm thinking, so I thought it was a huge mistake. And I know they want people to be able to advance, but when you look at that junior class, and it used to be 15, you could go to a 400. Mm-hmm. That's pretty darn tough to say, go out and buy a 400 for 1 year. Because when they turn 16, they're going to go to a 450,
Exactly.
So to do that, and it's huge. And I respect, that's the thing, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but with AMA, it seems like we always hear the negative. We don't hear the good, and they're recognizing that kind of stuff and where we are in today and what machines are available. And they're trying to do that, I guess, kind of what I think is the right thing, and after talking to you that night, I kept sitting there and thinking, okay, so we ran a 250 starting out. We went to a 300. Both my boys did. And they ran that the whole time. And by the time they got done with that, before they turned 16, it was like, man, I want some more juice so bad, but that's part of learning too. But now for you to say, and I just refuse. I'm not going to buy them a 400 for 1 year. I'm no different than anybody else, but like you said, the 450 that I got sitting out there, it's not even getting rode right now. It's race ready. I could take that and put a 400 cylinder on there, the kit that you're talking about. And we could have started racing that thing 2 years previous and then continue to still race it, when they turn 16. And a huge thing that I thought about that night, Travis, how many people call me and said, my son wants to start racing, or the kid calls me and says, I want to start racing. How old are you? I'm 15 or I'm 14. What do you got? I'm on a 450. Well, now instead of saying, okay, we got to end this conversation because you can't race that. But now you either got to sell your machine or at least go out and buy a different machine, and let's be honest, if you're going to go buy one, if it's a decent machine, you're probably going to spend at least $4,000,
Yeah. And
talking with you, now I can take that 450 or buy a 450 and set it up and put, it don't have to be just a guesstimate. And what do you think that's going to cost to actually do this kit?
A rough estimate of what I've heard is about the $1,500 to $2,000 mark, and that's them having your motor and them doing the work for you. So you wouldn't have to be mechanically inclined to do it. That's you give them the stuff, you buy the parts, they build it, they send it back to you.
So to put that in perspective, if you're a 5-year-old, what does every 5-year-old in our series want to race? A Kimco.
Yeah.
A Kimco, you know? And if you're on a Kimco, where can you buy a 50cc 2006 or older Kimco? You can't. And if you do, you're going to Texas, you're going to Michigan, you're going to Florida, because they're not worth anything except in Iowa, it appears like. And you're going to spend more than that money that you're just going to take that machine and be able to grow on it, you know what I mean, and have that for how many years is less money than what you could go out and spend on a 50cc.
I agree. I think it was a great step in the right direction. The amount of money that schoolboy class can cost, you know, especially to build it like on a newer YFZ or something, if that's the direction you were going to go, just, you know, for a younger kid, that's who's still making parts. It was a lot, and to be able to do so for a lot less money, it just makes sense. And be able to stay on the bike, you don't have to cut out your motor mounts, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, you know, custom wiring harnesses, intakes, everything else that goes along with it. It's a big stepping stone in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, very cool. I couldn't agree more. So my first thought on this is I've been proved wrong, and I am so happy that you brought this to the attention, you know, and I think I don't think the schoolboy class, my personal opinion, you could definitely argue with me on this, I didn't see it growing. I've seen it being that 3, maybe 4, probably at the most. Yeah. If someone else came in, we got a 5, it would have been like unbelievable, you know. But I can see this class now by this deal. I can see guys out of the junior class wanting to go to it in a heartbeat, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the classes are there, especially the youth. You know, you gotta know your kids' boundaries and their speed and their competitiveness of where they should be. And I think the expense stopped a lot of people from going to this class. And I'll be the first to admit, I told Cole 100 times I was not giving him a 250 hybrid. I wasn't going to do it. I was not going to waste my money. You're going to ride a 250 Raptor. You're not getting one for 1 year. Now we got him a 450 to practice on, and here we are, you know, doing something like that. It makes it much more reasonable. Why kids at that 15 years old, you know, most of them probably are practicing at home on dad's 450 or whatever it may be, are getting ready for that, you know, the future, and it just makes sense.
You know, one person as we're talking about it, and I said I wasn't going to drop names earlier, but one person that I just see this being a huge deal for is Derek Nimke. With Derek being taller, you know, he's almost looking small. I mean, he's looking like that 300 looks like a Honda 90 on him now. He's just grown so much. You know, and I know he was dying to go to a 400, you know, because he, you know, just wasn't of age and stuff. And man, I can just see them jumping all over this, you know. So, and there's more people too. It's just that's the first thing that pops in my head is some of the taller guys that, you know, almost look at Chris's boys when they're in the 90s, you know, they just outgrew them, but by age, that's where they had to be, you know. So I don't think there's a bad, I can't think of anything myself, and talking to you, I don't think you can, a bad situation around this bike. I think it's preparing them for the future and saving mom and dad some money. I mean, what better can you get at that, you know?
Absolutely. And you made a good point. Kids being bigger. Those 250s and those 300s I mean, I've hopped on my sons a couple times, and it's just like, man, this is awkward. I don't even know how you race it. And being a bigger kid, that would be a struggle. It'd be a big struggle. And I know like Tanner Housley raced it for a while this year on the 250, and I think the kid's taller than me, and I don't know how he was able to do it.
I'm not sure if I follow you on that, because I mean, I can set on a Honda 90 and it fits perfect.
I was more thinking of a 50 for you, Andy.
Oh,
Yeah. We gotta go size for size.
There you go. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I know you and I had talked about maybe doing a Facebook Live and separating it from this and not being so late, but I hope people tune in to see that. We'll maybe put out another one, maybe a little bit later. Maybe we'll do a Facebook Live and stuff and put that out again for people to hear this that didn't listen to the whole podcast, So, but I definitely appreciate it. One thing I want to ask you, the last thing, and then Chris is going to take over because I know he wants to talk. But what was your thoughts on the adult 90 this year?
Oh, I loved it. I unfortunately really can't race anymore with my back, and I probably shouldn't be on a Honda 90 either. Those back problems have stopped me from all kinds of things, but I can tough it out for a little bit and sure bring some excitement back to being able to get out there and do something. I loved it. I think it was great. We had a lot of people come down to watch those, and I think that kind of speaks for itself about how cool it was.
So did you I'm asking for your opinion because you obviously watched, you participated in almost, I think, every one of them. Did you like that they were different events each time, or would you prefer that they were the same events each time?
No, I think that different events was kind of cool because, if you just had like a little hair scramble race, every race or something like that, it just kind of the same thing over where these different events kind of attracted a lot different perspectives on it. And I think that part of it was actually really cool.
Cool. Well, we're definitely looking at it again. Chris is talking about buying one himself and participating, so we'll see.
We'll see. Gary's still out. I hear Brock was looking at one too, so we'll see.
I think I stopped that.
Maybe we could get a petition and put it up for a vote, Andy. Maybe we get you out there for a race.
Oh, here we go.
I think Andy has to do the Woods one then.
With age comes a cage. So, Troll Travis, we really appreciate it. Not only you coming on here, but you're one of the guys I feel like doesn't get enough credit at the races or wherever we're at. Too many times we get to having fun and, it's about the race. And, on Saturday nights, we all get busy and, we're kind of in each pit and you guys are always having fun down there. But you've created a culture, around your pits, and grown this bad habit into something that's just really cool. And I think obviously anybody that comes that doesn't know you, doesn't know the bad habits, if they walk by there on a Saturday night or a Friday night or a race day or Saturday night, I think they see the fun and the camaraderie that, that you guys have and the failures, you went through failures this year and, and those failures do nothing but, I don't know if it was you and I talked about this or somebody else, but we were all heartbroken when Cole had a first break and then he had a second break. And it's like, you keep pushing, I know how bad it hurt you guys, but he kept pushing. And then what happens? He wins the overall.
Yep.
It doesn't get cooler than that. So the culture that you guys have built around that bad habit, and I know how much time and effort you put in. I'm going to say I lied. I don't realize, nobody can realize until they're in your garage and see how much time that you put in there in the evenings and away from your family. And I think a lot of your family spend time with you out there maybe, but there's just so much that goes into creating that. That don't happen overnight. And over the years of being in this sport and the other sports, and I know you guys go do other stuff and have fun with, and you travel so much, it's just cool. And I tip my hat to you because it's something that people don't realize how important that is to our sport to have people like you, to have teams like you in there creating that culture. So I thank you.
No, I thank you. I appreciate it. It's definitely a lot of work, but seeing the smiles on the kids' faces, that's what drives me. It's something I always kind of wanted to do as a kid, never got the chance. I don't think I ever raced till I was like 22 or 23, something like that. And being able to help others kind of get there, it makes it worth it.
Yeah. And I know talking to you, I asked you, I said, give me one complaint. And you really didn't have any complaints about the races. The only thing that you could say if you had to be really picky was scoring. And I understand that, so, but I do appreciate, again, everything that you do, man. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
It's always about scoring. That's going to be my new shirt. So a couple questions while I was kind of in the background. We've got some questions coming in. So Dean, we didn't have a sign up on the Facebook page. We do have one on, I said that wrong. We don't have one on the website. We do have it on the Facebook page. So I'll reach out or have Tracy reach out, make sure you get that information regarding the banquet.
Gotcha.
The other thing is kind of touch on. Jarrod made a good comment. He kind of suggested or came up with the story or mentioned that I think it was Kip when he came in, kill switch, and that kind of hurt him at Weldon track. So I think, as we're talking about machines, what's the right fit? I think also for youngsters, not only what's the right fit, but do they know what the machine does? Mm-hmm. And that's the proper, what's the hand controls do? We always talked with my boys, the checklist, the quad dies out there in the middle of the field or during the race. What's our mental checklist? Did I hit the kill switch? Did I pull up my tether? Did I run out of gas and I need to put it on reserve? So those are the kind of the small things that we could work on in the off season as well. Not only getting the right machine, but knowing what to do in those circumstances that something does happen on the racetrack.
Absolutely. And what's your, we hadn't actually even talked about that kind of stuff. So I'm glad you brought it up, Chris. But one of our episodes is going to be about fitness, nutrition, and then mind/thoughts. And so that is a part of it too, is when you have those not failures, but mishaps, and how you overcome that. You know what I mean? Like you're talking and stuff. But again, now's the time to have them out in the garage going over that stuff and making sure. How many times we've seen the little 50s where the kid, we used to do, I'm glad we got rid of that. For how many years did we have a parade lap? And we always thought it was, I did anyway. I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was perfect. We wasted so much time because that took longer than the race most of the time. And the kids got more scared from the parade lap because they were bumping each other and, trying to make it up hills, burning belts and DRRs, not hitting the brakes like you're just saying, just boom, and by the time we got back from practice laps, we had 2/3 of them didn't even have number plates, because they were broke off. So, going over that in the garage and learning that kind of stuff is just, it's something that probably gets overlooked way too easy. So. Did we have any more questions?
No questions. And I just want to point out that if we stay on for another minute, you've broken the 2-hour mark.
No, 1 minute would get us two. Oh yeah, we broke. Yeah, be right at 2 hours. So
a little long, but I think it was a lot of great discussion. We got to thank Travis, Jarrod, Brady, Matt, and Brad, all for taking some time out of their own family. A lot of them were sitting in the back, just waiting for you to get done talking so they can come on. So appreciate them giving up their time with their families to come on and share their knowledge with the rest of us.
Yep. And just so everybody knows too, they won't all be this long. And I think when you and I talked earlier, I told you all 8 events, we can shoot for an hour. They can be 3 hours. There's that much stuff on these topics that we have for the next 7 that it can be 3 hours. But I think there's some of them that we can pinpoint pretty easy and just go over the hard stuff. Some of them are only, I think, going to take an hour. And then there's going to be more, I guarantee that's going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours. So, but man, I'm excited about every single one of them. Tonight, we was on the phone. I sent you some info there. Cheering some of our guests that are coming on, our experts in those fields and stuff. So really looking forward to that. So thank you for putting all this together, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. So do you have anything else? Pretty quiet these days. Let you do the talking.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you couldn't be on there with the way we had 6 of them, but I think it's one thing to understand too, or maybe let everybody know. I don't know if we're going to put a schedule out for this, but we will be taking the week of Christmas off. but
Yep.
we will have one on January 1st, correct? Our third one of the series will be January 1st.
Yep. So the next one's scheduled for next Wednesday, where the topic is tires. Matt Lindle's for sure going to join us. We're going to work on getting some other guests as well. The third episode on protection is going to be the 1st of January. So I hear a little birdie in my ear told me it was your wife's birthday on the 1st. So you'll have to make that up. That's also maybe, FYI for yourself to go get her a present.
Easy, Chris. Easy.
It's also Kim Ricketts' birthday. So January 8th episode will be suspension. January 15th, you already talked about it, kind of the fitness and nutrition episode that we're thinking of. January 22nd, race prep, going over what it takes to get ready for the race.
And, really quick on those two, number one, the mind, I think will be the single biggest thing for people to learn from. The single biggest thing, like we talked with Brady and Matt there earlier, it's 90% of it's in the mind, when you either quit, you've seen it, how many times they come in, I don't want to go another lap, and then you watch it, all the time. So that is where a lot of it's won, is between the ears, and that's going to be a huge thing. I know what Matt's wanting to talk about. I think I'm going to have another guest on that time, but that'll be huge, not only for the adults. I think that'll be absolutely huge for the kids, and maybe even bigger for the parents setting the standards for the kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nutrition's a big part. It's just not having those, cans of soda the night before, or that kind of Mountain Dew and a cigarette before each race, as we know.
Yep.
No, Mr. Lutz does, and has that nice Mountain Dew afterwards.
How he does that, I have no idea.
I don't know.
But the other thing you just mentioned, before I backed up there a little bit, is your race prep.
Yep. So race prep, we're thinking January 22nd.
Yep. And that one, once again, I truly believe the last four, the first three are great. The last four, I think, is something for the parents, for the kids, for the adults. And I honestly believe people in the pro class, AA, can learn something in every one of those last four that can literally make them faster this year, or less breaks down, which obviously costs us the race, So I'm real excited about them. Just talking to the people, their thoughts on it. I'm looking forward to every Wednesday here for the next 7 weeks. So cool.
So just to finish that out, January 29th, race day preparation. And then February 5th, we'll start on maintenance. And that takes us right up to the banquet. So
I think that's a week after the banquet. I think the banquet's in between the 7th and 8th, if I remember right.
Yep. Banquet is on the 1st of February.
One thing that I'm excited to hear more about is I was talking to Matt Lindle about the race day, talking about subject and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll never forget about what he told me, and I completely believe it, and I completely believe it's the same with, I'm huge into wrestling and racing, right? I believe it's the exact same thing. I remember him telling me this. Race day, it shouldn't take a whole hour because that's the easiest day. It's truly what he said. If you're prepared, that's the easiest day. There's no pressure if you're prepared the way you should be prepared. So when you see, and the first thing that gets in my mind is when I see race reports, and every race report has, the brakes failed, we're not prepared. So you spend all that money, all that time, even if it's just an entry fee and gas money getting there. Unprepared, you're going to have stuff like that. And what Matt and the other guests are going to be able to tell us about the race day, the race prep, the maintenance in between, even more important is, it's gold, Yeah. We've never had in our sport, I don't believe I've ever heard where people have kind of handed you their Bible over of how to do things. So,
and you can kind of relate that, the race isn't won on the track. It's won in the pits.
Yep.
So, and you can relate that to any sport,
Exactly. Yep.
for, our motto this year for football, it's what we do in the dark. It's what we do when nobody else sees us doing what we need to be doing to prepare ourselves for that next week.
Yep.
So, all right, buddy.
Thank
Gonna
you.
cut you off. You set a record of the longest podcast ever.
Really? I'll wear that on my chest. I feel good about that.
So yeah. Well, thanks to those that are still around listening to us. Exciting. It was a really good podcast. I think a lot of good information, good perspective. So till next time, thanks for joining us.
First, I want to tell the Christiansons to go to bed now.
Oh, they're still up. Go to bed.
Well,
Elliot,
I've heard that they fall asleep listening to us. So hopefully they're still awake. Sorry, parents, but it is time to go to sleep now.
I'm sure they'd fall asleep to your voice.
Oh.
All right. Well, till next time. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.